Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, I've got a question for you. Who do we think you are? Feeling comfortable? Don't worry, my goal is not to make you feel uncomfortable. My name is Stuart Heginbotham, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about building a personal public relations strategy. When I thought about this talk, I thought, how can I speak to people about something that is useful and relevant to everyone in the room? Something that is personal and immediate. What do we think about each other, the people in this room? And how can we influence what the person sitting next to us is thinking about us? And what is useful for the other person to think about you? This could be described as the beginnings of a personal public relations strategy. Or it's more modern to talk about it in terms of calling it building a personal brand. Personal brand is about selling you, be it to your employer, your customers, or even your partner or friends. Who do we think you are? First, to the textbooks. Harvard Business Review very helpfully published an article on exactly this topic this month, building your personal brand. They say there are 7 steps. And just to give you some of those steps, the first one of the steps is auditing your personal brand equity. That means figuring out what your strengths are. Another step is establishing your personal narrative. That's got to be the stories that you tell about yourself. Yeah. And another step is embodying your brand. Well, that's got to be about living the way you live. Do you live your life in alignment with your brand? The one I agree with most is communicating your brand, and it often gets neglected. But what are these guys on? Are there really 7 steps? Are they sure it's not 6 or 8? And what's it all the crazy consultants speak? Who do you think you are? When I first thought about this, I thought, wow, what a rabbit hole. And then I looked up on my wall, and by chance, I'd printed out Carl Jung's 12 archetypes. Archetypes are like descriptions of people. And there are people like a hero, a caregiver, and I think there's a magician as well. And they each have a description. Like the hero's description is his goal is to belong. He always wants to fight with people. That's his flaw. And he has a skill, and his skill is courage. So they each have these descriptions, but it's useful to think about yourself and figure out, which archetype are you? That's going to tell you something about yourself. And then if you're feeling really brave, you can go and ask someone else what archetype they think you are. It could be a new party game. Guess the archetype. No, well, maybe not. Who do you think you are? Is that really the most important question? I read a book once by an open source marketing guru. I can't remember his name, and the book is long gone, but the lesson is still with me. And he said you should think about brands in this way. You should think about, what do people currently believe about your brand? And what are people willing to believe about your brand in the future? I think the message there is your brand has to be grounded in reality. It's pointless letting your ego guide you and trying to persuade people things that, just are not real and about your brand. Taking these questions and personalizing it a bit, it becomes, what are people willing to believe about you? An interesting question. And if you take it a step further, it becomes, what are you willing to believe about yourself? Again, it's not a good idea to come up with crazy, wacky things that you want to try and persuade other people about you. And it's even more important not to try and believe those things about yourself. Another question that comes through here though is what is useful for people to believe, for you to believe about yourself. So let's take an example that we can all relate to. Who thinks they're a fantastic public speaker? Maybe we're all still working on it. Yeah. How good a public speaker do you think you are? Get it clearly in your head. Articulate it for yourself. How good a public speaker you are. And then let me ask you, are you willing to believe you're just a little bit better? Do you think other people are willing to believe you're just a little bit better? You believe it and you will project it. Other people will believe it. Your confidence will rise. And what do you know? It'll be true. So I leave you with 3 questions. I know a lot of questions. What are people willing to believe about you? What are you willing to believe about yourself? And importantly, what is it useful for you to believe about yourself?